The African News Update on top accolade news. The headlines. U.S. Secretary of State to skip G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in South Africa. Sudan criticizes Kenya for hosting RSF rebel group event. Rwanda suspends development cooperation with Belgium over DRC conflict. Zimbabwe's Commercial Workers Union call for informal retail sector. In politics, U.S. Secretary of State to skip G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in South Africa. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced that he will not attend the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting set to take place in Johannesburg, South Africa later this week, citing objections to the event's focus on topics like climate change and global equity. Rubio, who labeled the summit's agenda anti-American, argued that issues such as terrorism and energy security should be prioritized instead. Despite his absence, the U.S. will still be represented at the meeting, likely at a lower level. Other G20 members, including Russia, China, and several EU countries, have reaffirmed their commitment to the summit, which will focus on advancing economic growth and reducing global inequality. Political analysts suggest that Rubio's decision could give more room for Russia and China to push their agendas. Still in politics, Sudan criticizes Kenya for hosting RSF rebel group event. Sudan has strongly criticized Kenya for hosting an event at the Kenyatta International Convention Center on February 18th, where the Rapid Support Forces, led by Abdul Rahim Hamdan Dagalo, were reportedly setting up a parallel government. The Sudanese foreign minister accused President William Ruto's administration of breaching international law by allowing the RSF, a group accused of genocide in Sudan, to conduct political activities in Kenya. Sudan warned that this move undermines African sovereignty and violates international principles, further accusing Kenya of fostering division within the continent. The Sudanese government vowed to take necessary action against Kenya for allegedly supporting the rebel group's objectives. Moving on in politics, Rwanda suspends development cooperation with Belgium over DRC conflict. Rwanda has announced the suspension of its development cooperation program with Belgium, citing Belgium's stance in the ongoing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Rwandan government accuses Belgium of siding with the DRC, calling for sanctions against Rwanda over its alleged backing of the M23 rebel group, which has made a significant gain in eastern Congo. Rwanda denies supporting the M23 and criticizes Belgium's action as an aggressive campaign to block vital development funding. In response, Belgium's foreign minister stated that the country will handle the suspension professionally and continue to seek a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Shifting focus to economy, Zimbabwe's Commercial Workers Union calls for informal retail sector. The Commercial Workers Union of Zimbabwe has called on the government to enforce labor standards within the informal retail sector, stressing that without such measures, the country's push for formalizing the sector will fail. The union's plea comes as several major retailers, including Choppies and Unilever, are set to shut down operations in Zimbabwe. CWU's General Secretary argued that informal retailers are contributing to unfair competition by avoiding taxes, offering poor working conditions, and denying workers' rights, such as union membership. He urged the government to compel the informal sector to follow employment standards and contribute to the country's economy and social protection programs. You are watching the African News Update on Top Accolade News. Do stay with us. Still to come. Thanks for staying with us. In conflict, United Nations accuses M23 rebels of executing 3 children in BUKAVU. The United Nations Human Rights Office has condemned the M23 rebel group for the summary execution of 3 children in BUKAVU, a city in the Democratic Republic of Congo that was captured last week. According to the United Nations spokesperson, Ravina Shamdasani, the boys aged 15 and under were found with weapons from an abandoned military camp and were killed when they refused to surrender them. This incident highlights the ongoing human rights violation in eastern DRC, where M23 rebels have intensified their attacks, displacing thousands. The United Nations is also investigating other abuses, including killings and sexual violence committed by both M23 and the Congolese forces. Moving to crime, Limpopo farmer and workers set to stand trial for brutal murders of 2 women. The trial of Limpopo farmer Zachariah Johannes Olivia and his 2 workers, accused of brutally murdering 2 women and feeding their bodies to pigs, have been scheduled for August 4 to 15, 2025 at the High Court in Polokwane. They face charges including premeditated murder, attempted murder, and possession of an unlicensed firearm. Moving to entertainment, Michael Blackson joins NDC. Ghanaian-American comedian Michael Blackson has publicly declared his allegiance to the National Democratic Congress after the government announced the settlement of over 6 billion Ghana cedis in domestic debt exchange program coupons. The announcement, spearheaded by President John Mahama, led Blackson to express his gratitude on social media, highlighting the positive impact that this decision has on his free school. Blackson, who had previously voiced frustration about his investment in Eurobond under the ACCUSES administration, shared his joy and officially joined the NDC, praising Mahama for bringing smiles to the children at his school. Now in sports, ZIFA announces new venue for Warriors World Cup qualifier against Benin. The Zimbabwe Football Association has confirmed that the Warriors will face Benin at Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban, South Africa for their 2026 World Cup qualifier on March 20th. Despite initial plans to host the match at the National Sports Stadium in Harare, renovations on the stadium have delayed its approval for international matches. This marks another fixture away from Zimbabwe, as the country has struggled to find a CAF-approved home ground since its readmission in 2023. ZIFA had hoped that the National Sports Stadium would be ready in time, but will now have to proceed with Durban at the new venue for the match. That concludes our African news update for today. Stay tuned for more African news and development. Thanks for joining us. I am Rumi Okocha. Connect and engage with us on all our social media handles. Do have a wonderful day.